So this episode of History Hunters takes us to Columbia, California, where we're at the Columbia State Historic Park. It was established as a historic park in the 1940s. And I'm right here in front of Eagle Cottage. It is one of the historic buildings here. Right behind me is the Columbia Gazette. And this building here was actually featured in an episode of Little House on the Prairie. This entire facility here has been used in a lot of westerns, including High Noon. In fact, in 1982, I watched Tom Selleck, Elliott and Ben Johnson filming a movie here. It's called Shadow Riders. Beautiful day up here in Tuolumne County. A lot of people come up here to enjoy the day. I'll tell you all about it on this episode.
Before I take you on a tour of Columbia, let me explain how this mining camp sprang up as one of the many in California during the gold rush of 1849. In March 1850, Dr. Thaddeus Hildreth led a prospecting party that discovered gold at this site. Word spread like wildfire, and hundreds of miners began arriving here. Hildreth's digging was the name of the original camp, and by mid-year, thousands of miners were working the gold placers here. Columbia was known as the gem of the southern mines, and by 1853 was one of the largest cities in California.
Now, if you had been here in Columbia in June of 1982, like I was, you would have seen some great movie making. It was Shadow Riders. It's a Louis L'Amour Sackett's series. A scene was shot right here with Tom Selleck, Elliott, and Ben Johnson. This particular scene that I'm talking about, Ben Johnson's a captive. He's over here sawing wood right about in this area. And his relatives come up there, right on the side. They're going to talk to him about freeing him from jail. And apparently stayed in this jail right here. And so Tom Selleck and Elliott were standing just to the right of these bricks here. And then later, Uncle Blackjack Traven, played by Ben Johnson, busts out of this jail by using sticks of dynamite. Apparently he was an explosive expert. Still here, it hasn't changed a bit. I found out that they were filming that series, and unfortunately I got the autograph of Ben Johnson and didn't even know who Sam Elliott was standing right next to him. Of course, I was more interested in Katherine Ross because I knew who Katherine Ross was. They were actually married at the time, but Sam Elliott didn't register with me, unfortunately. Of course, I knew Tom Selleck. He was in Magnum PI. Funny story is, right over there in that parking lot, they had the food wagon where they had a food catering truck for the stars. One of the women was, Tom Selleck was kind of the sex symbol of the day. She was gawking at him, and as he got up to take his plate and dump it, she said, "I'll take that, Tom." And Tom Selleck said, "No thanks," and he threw it right in the trash. I guess he made him feel pretty uncomfortable. Now, if you look at this Masonic Hall, it certainly looks like it dates back to 1855, but it's actually a reproduction of what was here. Now, in this lot, there were several wooden buildings back in the day. In fact, most of this town was wooden buildings until fire of 1854, I believe. And there was a second one that just wiped out most of the town, so they decided that they better put in some brick buildings, which would withstand fires. In 1853, Charles Cardinal purchased a 3-story frame building on the property. He ran the St. Charles restaurant on the first floor and the St. Charles Hotel on the other 2 floors. After the wooden building was destroyed in the Great Fire of 1854, a 3-story brick structure was built on the lot. The Masons used the upper floor of the building, and in 1863, the Masons bought the lower floor. In 1890, the entire brick building was torn down, probably because the cement didn't hold, and the land was mined. The bricks were then used in the rawhide mine. But in 1947, the Columbia Historic Park Association bought the lot from the estate of Tom Conlon and then sold it to the state for $1. In 1949, the present building was constructed by the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons and given to the state in exchange for a 50-year lease. So this building is not original to 1854.
Thomas Starr King, the famous Reverend from San Francisco, came to Columbia on June 24, 1862 to deliver a speech titled Washington and His Character as a Mason. The Unitarian pastor was influential in California politics during the Civil War and spoke zealously in favor of the Union. In fact, President Abraham Lincoln credited him with preventing California from becoming a separate republic. Less than 2 years after visiting Columbia, the 39-year-old Reverend became exhausted from his relentless lecture circuit and succumbed to diphtheria and pneumonia in San Francisco on March 4, 1864.
Right across the street from the Masonic Temple is the Fallon Theater, where a lot of people still come up for plays put on by the Sierra Repertory Theater. In the 1960s, the players were from the University of the Pacific, and if it wasn't for the fact that I was an autograph collector and snagged a letter a few years ago, I wouldn't have known that Earl Warren, who was the governor of California at the time, he came here for a play in 1949. I have the letter that he wrote to the drama department saying he had a great time. Warren, of course, later became the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court and swore in President John F. Kennedy as president, and I also believe that Lyndon Johnson as well. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the clip, but this episode of Little House on the Prairie has him walking out of this building over here into the Fallon House ice cream parlor. Cool episode, I remember. A lot of people come here for plays. Of course, I have as well. So I've come over to this area where it's, it's basically reconstructed buildings and such to appease the tourists and such. These are not original by any stretch, nor do they even look original. They look like frames because, like I said, they put on events here. But 1853, Columbia was one of the largest cities in California, with an estimated population of about 25 to 30,000 people. Between 1850 and the early 1900s, as much as $150 million in gold was mined here. In fact, the gold that was mined here helped to finance the U.S. government and the Union Army during the Civil War. As mining dwindled in the late 1860s, Columbia began to decline itself. Looks like an old stable. But they conduct what's called Columbia Diggins here. I think it's in May or June. They show people in costume out here and try to show people what life was like back in the 1850s and 60s. You might be wondering about these rocks here. Well, these were all exposed by the hydraulic mining that took place. They would take these giant nozzles of water, force water through them, and it washed these away. So we would have actually been underground back then, probably about where that road is over there. As they were seeking gold, they had to get the gold out somehow, and these limestone boulders were left in place. They're all over this area. But hydraulic mining was later outlawed because it was so destructive to the environment. So I'm going to take you over the road there and show you where they shot some scenes for Shadow Riders. All right, so we're going to go up here to the road. And this is the road that a block to the east of the historic part of town where everybody's used to going. And they shot a lot of scenes down in here on horseback. I remember Tom Selleck and Ben Johnson going down here on their horses repeatedly for shots. Ben Johnson's somebody that I knew because I watched Shane, the movie Shane, and he was huge. He was like a big legendary Western star to me.
Say, which one of them tater pickers are you working for? Or are you just squatting on the range?
And Tom Selleck, of course, was just starting as Magnum PI, so there were a lot of girls watching them do these shots where they would, Ben Johnson and Tom Selleck came up here on their horses, and I have to say, Tom Selleck made a great cowboy. And as they came up here, the girls were just gawking all over Tom Selleck. And Ben Johnson looked at me right about in this area and said, How come all the girls are paying attention to Tom and not me? I thought that was so funny. Of course, everybody knows that Ben Johnson was a sex symbol. Not.
I know more about that country than Jack Rabbit knows about running.
Now, I believe that the horses came right down here, if I remember correctly. Of course, this tree was not here or smaller. They did. It seems down here. If I don't trip and fall and kill myself, it'll be a miracle. Yeah. Right in this area. Yeah, and Tom Selleck was standing right here. I think he's signing autographs right about here. This tree was not here at the time. So I did a little lining up, and this is exactly where Ben Johnson and Sam Elliott were shooting this scene right here. The clue is that rock right there. So I'm curious how many of you are actually fans of Shadow Riders if you've seen the movie. It's on YouTube. And somebody posted that even though it's quite old, it's what, 40 years old already? Close to it? And past, actually. And they said it's still a good movie. And I would agree, it's a pretty good movie. Based on Louis L'Amour, of course. It's one of the greatest Western writers there was. I don't know how old that building is, but looks like a miner's shack. I'm going to show you the old bricks on this one. It's very rustic looking. This talks about the immigrants that landed here. The Biddles, the Bacombs, the Morgans, the Hales, the Velassos, Sarton, and Martinez families. Stories and dreams of these families still exist in the architecture, wallpaper, and in additions to the house. Today, the house remains one of the oldest structures in Columbia. This sign warns us that this is a stage crossing, but it's not running today. But I do have some video to show you that I shot a couple years ago to show you what it's like up here on the weekend. Now this is a very popular place up here for the ladies, Columbia Kate's Tea House. It's not historic, but I thought I'd show you anyway. If you watch our channel regularly, you know that we did a video on the jails of Tuolumne County, and I don't know if I should make you hunt that up to take a look on the inside, or if I should treat you to another look at it. Okay, so I'm going to take you in the jail once again. Yeah, you remember this because of all the graffiti on the walls. Crazy. And probably since I was here last time, more has been put up here. Oh yes, times were tough back then and people drank. Oh, men did. But this tells about the Prosper Rocher Brewery, which is a half-mile up the road here. Apparently it's no longer there, and it's just a brick foundation, stone foundation visible today. But the clampers put this up near the parking lot. And check out this old building right here. That's crazy old. But this building here, I mean, I don't think it's inhabited. But it looks like something only ghosts live in. Check that out. And there's an outhouse over there. Wonder if it's used. Well, they definitely don't want you entering this property. Right over here is the St. Charles Saloon. Now, it was originally the Albertine Saloon. And it's a very popular place around here to drink.
The Columbia Mercantile Building here was originally known as the McGinn de Brunette Building. Like most buildings in Columbia, the original wooden building burned in the fire in 1854, but was rebuilt of brick in 1855. The building has contained a grocery and clothing store, a candy store, and since 1960 the building has housed the current mercantile business. The Main Street Firehouse in Columbia dates back to 1911. Before the current structure was built, the engine company leased a one-story building on the lot, which was torn down and replaced with the current structure.
So one of my favorite actors, Gary Cooper, shot Scenes from High Noon right here. It's just incredible to me. 1952. Well, a visit to Columbia wouldn't be the same if I didn't tell you again about the Wilson McConnell house. It's where Gary Cooper went looking for a deputy. Harry Morgan was in this house, and he chickened out. He was a coward. He did not want to go fight the bad men. Gary Cooper walks out this gate and walks that way towards the firehouse.
The City Hotel started as a brick structure built after the 1854 fire. Originally a saloon, in 1860 a hardware store moved in. George Morgan bought the building in 1865 and for decades added on to what was known as Morgan's City Hotel. Today the building has been renovated and is in business as the City Hotel.
This place is crawling with kids today, families, but this is the museum. And there was a scene from Shadow Riders shot right here between Archie Armstrong, who played Miles Gillette in the film, and then there was Sam Elliott, and it was shot right here.
I pulled out about 4 days ago. I got a feeling you're going after him.
Pack's out the place now. You ride with me.
There's a scene where Sam Elliott is walking away from here, and in the background you see that building over there. And in the background you see on top of the building an air conditioning unit, which was not common back in the 1860s.
Each time I come to the museum, I look for this elaborate drawing made in 1882 by James Fallon in an autograph album. My first viewing of it as a kid dispelled any misconceptions that I had that folks back then were less sophisticated. In fact, the opposite may be true today. The museum features some of the belongings of the folks who inhabited Columbia during the gold rush. It also puts a face to early Columbia. Maria Degner, for example, wrote a cousin saying that poverty was unknown in Columbia and that boys aged 6 to 8 were making $5 a day panning for gold. You can almost see tragedy etched into the expression of this woman, the widow of Constable John Larry, who was murdered in the streets of Columbia in 1858. German native Anton Bixel came here in 1854 and built a brewery that made beer for the miners. General Jonas Winchester was also an early Columbia pioneer. And then there was Darius Mills, who was the town banker. This is the D.O. Mills building. There was first a wooden structure here in 1852 and burned with the rest of the town in 1854. A brick building replaced it, which still stands today. The building originally housed a bank, post office, an assay, and smelting office. The assay office was said to be accessible only by secret passage, presumably to safeguard the gold that would have been stored there. The first telegraph in Columbia was installed in this building in 1855.
Now, the two-story building here is the Dutch Howe printing office. And Dutch Howe was the newspaper publisher here in Columbia. That first floor is now a mock drugstore, and the building next to it is a dental museum. We'll check those out. So inside the dental museum is a complete set of dental instruments used in 1850. You talk about brutal. Those things look, and they didn't have anything to deaden the pain. I am glad I didn't live back then, because I don't know if I could have stood a tooth extraction or even a filling. And here we go with a display here at the drugstore. 1857, they set this up. All kinds of drugs in here. So I have to share a memory that happened right in this area. Tom Selleck was coming around the corner here. He was going off in that direction to film at the City Hotel. And I knew that he had been in Knights Ferry because I saw a newspaper report about him being there, shooting scenes there. And I asked him how Knights Ferry was, and he turns around and says, it was great. Lots of rattlesnakes. And of course, that area in the summertime is infested with rattlesnakes. Glad he didn't get bit. Right there's the drugstore, and there's a firehouse right there. Usually Pete the fire engine is here, but I haven't seen it today. But I also wanted to point out the cisterns that are in the ground here, because after the Great Fire in the 1850s, several of them had needed some water supply, and so they came up with this system where they would installed some water down in these holes here, like basically wells in the street, so they could run their fire hoses in, and that way they could tap into the water supply if ever a fire broke out again. There was also a pretty intricate system of getting water here, because of course you need water to mine. You need water for placer mining, and so they constructed this flume 20 miles away. It tapped into the Stanislaus River. It was a complex system of wooden pipes and flumes and ditches to convey river water here. Here's the blacksmith shop. Parrott's blacksmith shop. They're actually operating in here right now. How you guys doing?
Hello.
Now this is the home of the Columbia Museum of the Native Sons of the Golden West, and it was built in 1856 as the U.S. Bakery and Coffee Saloon. Now on the top floor it had rooms for rent, and if you notice that railing up there, well, it was cast in Troy, New York and shipped around the Horn. The post office was also located in here at one time. Oh wow, here's one of the original El Camino Real bells. I wonder where this one was. Can you guess what this building was? That's right. That barber pole in front tells you it was the barber shop. It's now a photo studio, or it was. You could have those old-timey pictures taken in it. I don't know if they're still operating a business today, but whenever you needed a shave and a haircut, you look for these barber poles. Nice drainage system up there. Prevents the wood from rotting. That building behind me, the Wells Fargo Express building, is probably the most popular building here, most photographed building here, and it's appeared in a lot of movies. It's appeared in the movie Rage at Dawn.
Too bad Mr. Peterson has to miss this.
I don't think we get the Renos to wait. They ready in the bank?
They got everything set.
Good.
It also appeared in Pale Riders. In fact, Clint Eastwood shot some scenes inside of that building for the movie Pale Riders. So Clint Eastwood has been here. Been a lot of Western stars who filmed here in Columbia. That plaque up there says this was built in 1858, but the original office was wooden, and it was 1852, and it burned in 2 years later, so they built this structure. The agents were William Dagner, who's actually buried in the Columbia Cemetery. We actually featured him in one of our videos. But the real interesting part is what's on the inside. Yeah, you should recognize this from Pale Riders. The legendary Clint Eastwood filmed right in here. Go ahead, make my day. Actually, he didn't say that in the movie, I'm just joking. Right across the street is the Brady building. I remember it caught fire probably 10, 15 years ago, and they rebuilt that. I don't know the historical significance of it.
This is the old Oddfellows Hall, which dates back to 1855. It was first occupied by the San Francisco-based store of Toomey and O'Keefe, and a doctor named McChesney practiced medicine on the top floor in 1856. The Oddfellows purchased it in 1868.
So here is another building that was featured in Shadow Riders. It was on this porch where the mountain people were sitting. They confront Sam Elliott's character of Dal Traven, who brought in horse thieves who turned out to be their kin. So they tried to hang Dal Traven.
You all hereabouts?
So let's do another filming location for Shadow Riders. They're dragging off Sam Elliott here to be hung. He's he's Confederate, and they want to kill him in the movie. And Tom Selleck is a Union soldier, and he intervenes, and of course they ask why he's saving a rib. He said, ordinarily I wouldn't. This one happens to be my brother. These rocks are in the background of that particular scene. and Shadow Riders.
This brick building, called the Claverie Building, is authentic and it dates back to 1857. It was built by 3 Frenchmen who operated a store inside. It was later sold to a merchant named Sun Lan Sing and became known as the Old China Store.
So that is the Levitt Walker Building. This brick building was built in the fall of 1854 by jeweler L. Jalumstein to replace the frame structures that burned earlier that year. The corner store was occupied jointly by H. Smith, Pacific Express agent, and W. O. Sleeper, a banker. Levin Walker Stationery Store occupied the north section of the building, rebuilt in part after the 1857 fire by Levitt and Walker. In later years, it was called the Velasco's Pay-Or Saloon. You can buy a sarsaparilla now at the Douglas Saloon, but this was once the site of a stage driver's retreat, which is a wood building that burned in 1854 and was rebuilt again. And then after the Inferno of 1857, Jack Douglas bought the lot and built this here building. The business was called the Douglas Saloon and Billiard Parlor, and it had huge paintings in gilded frames and crystal decanters and mahogany billiard tables that were the envy of all the gold camps around here. This area right here shows how the hydraulic water systems carried water to this area to wash out the dirt for mining purposes. And here's a stamp mill right here. They would put rocks in there, and those would go up and down, smashing the rocks, break up the ore so they could get the gold out. So I think right now what I'm going to do is take you up to the schoolhouse, show you the old historic schoolhouse, and another building that a lot of people don't know about, St. Anne's Catholic Church, and there's a cemetery there with a lot of historical graves as well. So here we are, we're at the Columbia Schoolhouse. It dates back to 1860, and a lot of you presidential historians know that's the year that Abraham Lincoln was elected president. So it's one of the oldest schoolhouses in California, certainly in the historic Mother Lode. This was renovated a number of times. You know, after a while your mortar starts falling apart and you have to restore that. In 1937, following the Long Beach earthquake that leveled a lot of brick buildings, they closed a lot of the brick buildings in California, especially the schools. So this closed in 1937. I believe the Long Beach earthquake was in 1933. And I always have to interject a little bit of TV history. In 1982, I was an extra in the TV series Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. It was a very short-lived series. It involved Terry Treyas, Richard Dean Anderson, Tim Topper, River Phoenix. And they did a scene here where it was weird, they were dancing on the side of the building, stepping up on that ledge there. But I'm pretty sure that River Phoenix was also in that scene. It was really a corny show, and it didn't last very long. This plaque tells us the history of this building. In early 1860, the school lot was purchased. The building plans were selected and the cornerstone laid. By fall, the school building was completed by Mr. Donegan at a cost of $4,898. Dedication ceremonies were held, as was the Grand Calico Party to raise money for a school bell. The school was renovated in 1872. And again in 1881. The school was closed in 1937 as it did not meet earthquake safety standards. In 1947, the state of California purchased the site from the Columbia Historic Park Association for $1. The old school building was restored in 1960 for $60 grand, most of which was raised by the students and California Teachers Association. So I've actually been in this building a number of times. You know, when it's open, you get to see inside. But on one particular occasion, I was here with the school. They were reenacting the way it was back in the 1860s to be a school kid. And remember, one kid had to wear a dunce cap and sit in the corner. I don't know if any of you are old enough to have been sitting there and have to endure the humiliation of having a dunce cap put on your head, but that used to be a practice back then, and you know, it may have hurt their self-esteem, but I bet they shaped up. You know, unlike today, you let kids run wild, and we got kids shooting kids in schools now. It's crazy. Here's one of the most historic churches around, the Church of the 49ers. Obviously, it's been rebuilt over the years, but this is one of the oldest churches in Columbia. Slim Pickens' funeral was held here. At 167 years old, there's the St. Ed's Catholic Church. Dates back to the 1850s. The only one I've seen like this would be the St. Mary's Catholic Church in Stockton near the Crosstown Freeway. This one has a rich history. Construction began July 1856 and was completed on November 1st of the same year, 1856, and was consecrated by Archbishop Alamani of San Francisco. The belfry was added in 1857. Now, the first Catholic church in Columbia was established in 1852 when services were held in a log frame and canvas structure bearing a wooden cross. In the winter of 1853, a new church was built on the east side of Gold Street with Reverend Henry Alaric as the priest. Reverend Daniel Slattery was the priest in Columbia in July 1855, and he began a drive for subscriptions from the miners to build St. Anne's on Kennebec Hill. This is Kennebec Hill right here, where this graveyard is. We're gonna see if we can explore some of the graves here as well. Now, the architect for the church was John Wallace. He was a surveyor from England who was then working in Columbia. A foundation of native stone was laid upon which the brick walls were built. The bricks were made at Shaw's Flat Kiln by Jordan and Company of Sonora. The Gothic-shaped window head had 4 panels of colored glass, and the main window was of clear glass. Now, the bell was actually cast in Troy, New York, and added in 1857, shipped around the Horn at 1,600 pounds. Crazy. The entire backside of this church is covered in this metal, like metal shingles. So I got my camera up to the window here because I'm trying to get a video of what's behind the altar, and there's some angels, and I understand that those were painted by James Fallon, who died a long time ago, and whose artwork that we just saw in the display case at the Columbia Museum. The Fallon House Theater is named after the Fallon family. Now, most of the older graves are down the hill here. Let's see if we can spot a few. John James, son of P.N.E. O'Hara. He must be an Irish immigrant. He was 9 years old. He died in 1875. Wow. Here's the grave of Patrick Dolan. He was a native of Ireland, departed 1863. He's 26. Blessed are the dead that die in the Lord from henceforth. Now saith the Spirit, they may rest from their labors of their work. Follow them. Revelation. Boy, isn't this sad? I mean, this, you can't even make out anything here. It's been really shattered. This graveyard once had the remains of Constable John Leary. He was shot and killed trying to apprehend some criminals here in Columbia. I understand that his body was moved out of here back to over to San Francisco after his wife passed away. As is normally the case, these graveyards in the Gold Country are heavily populated by Irish immigrants. Speaking of Irish immigrants, this grave of Peter Davis, he died very young. He was 22 years old. But when I'm at places like this, you know, okay, he died, what, 1858 he died. I just think about the times where this very spot here was covered by mourners who were mourning the death of this young man. And even those mourners are passed on. It's really sobering when you stop and think about the brevity of life. So as I walk around St. Anne's Catholic Church here in Columbia, California, I want to thank you so much for joining us all the way to the end of this exploration of Columbia State Historic Park and this historic church and the schoolhouse that we've just visited. We would love to hear what you thought of our video. Have you been here before? I'm betting if you're from anywhere from Northern California, you probably have been here. You could also do us a favor if you give us a thumbs up, subscribe to History Hunters, but subscribing alone does not really help us. It would really help us if you watched our channel, watched our videos, Also, if you could hit that notification bell, that way when we post a new video, you will be notified immediately. We usually post on Sunday morning. Thank you so much for the success of History Hunters.